This video is going to go through a little of the proofs that are on the back of your review and just giving you some strategies again. Remember, our number one strategy, cover up this whole thing, even cover up the prove line and say, what do I know when I look at this picture? So I know the lines are parallel. I'm going to mark everything that is congruent. So these are congruent, these are congruent, those are congruent. And if I know angle 5 equals 100, I'm going to put that on my picture. So in my mind, I'm thinking anything else, there's 100, there's 100, there's 100. And all I got to do is be able to name the relationship. And we see, what are we trying to prove? We're trying to prove that angle 1 is 100. So angle 5 and angle 1 have a special named relationship. Sorry, I had a little visit from someone. So looking at the relationship, I know those are corresponding angles, so I'm probably going to use that. Okay, so I go here. First statement, A is parallel to B, that's given. Also given. So get the things in that you know. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. We just said those are corresponding angles. So parallel lines, corresponding angles congruent. Anytime you go from congruent to equal measure, that's definition of congruent. If you go from equal back to congruent, same way, either direction. So measure of angle 5 equals 100, measure of angle 1 equals 100 because 5 is equal to 1, that's substitution. Okay, go to the next one. Again, cover this up. What are we trying to do? Do we have anything? Do we have parallel lines? We don't have parallel lines, which is unfortunate, but I know angle 4 and angle 6 are congruent. And so that means I'll be able to show, because these 4 and 6 make a Z, I'll be able to show that these are parallel. So I know I'm going to be able to say A is parallel to B because I have alternate interior angles in there. I'm not looking at the proof right now. Alternate interior angles mean we have parallel lines. And then if I have parallel lines, I know that 8 and 2 are congruent because they're alternate exterior. So I'll go back to the problem, look at it. Okay, I got my given. Again, anytime you go from equal to congruent, there's your hint. We're just saying angle 6 is congruent to angle 4. It's just the fancy part. And then A is parallel to B because 6 and 4 are alternate interior angles. So alternate interior angles congruent implies parallel lines. You can write it either order. I like to write it this order when we're showing we have parallel lines, whereas if we have parallel lines, you go the other way. So if you have parallel lines, then 8 and 2 are congruent because parallel lines implies alternate exterior angles congruent. So if you're doing this and you cover everything up and it's not a fill in the blank, you can at least list as many of these things as you can tell from the picture, and you'll figure out stuff. The same thing's going to happen down here on these problems. So on these problems, we have 2 sets of parallel lines, which basically means everything up here. So these 2 lines are parallel. These 2 lines are parallel. Basically, everything in each of these chunks of 4 are equal. So you could literally list everything. I need to show that 1 and 11 are congruent. I'm just going to put those in here for the sake of time. I need to show that 1 and 11 are congruent. So I could just go this way. I could say 1 is congruent to 5 because those are corresponding angles. 5 is congruent to 7 because they're vertical angles. 7 is congruent to 11 because they're corresponding angles. And you got it. And do the transitive property. So when you're doing these, when you see these angles going around, try to connect them using transitive property, and you can show that. Then you just name your steps. 1's congruent to 5 because they're corresponding. You could list the whole thing out. 5's congruent to 7, vertical angles theorem. 7's congruent to 11, corresponding, and then transitive. And you have kind of this little flow proof that you could put into steps. Same situation on this next problem. You're given to go here. I just put those in there so you remember that always goes first, even if you get stuck. Same thing is true. I need to see 16 and 8. So I'm just going to work my way around. 8 is congruent to 4, because they're corresponding. 4 is congruent to 16, because they're corresponding. So if 8 is congruent to 4, 4 is congruent to 16, 8 is congruent to 16 transitive. So this is my little abbreviated form, but that easily transfers over into steps. So if that's a way to help you figure out some of those proofs, there's some good practice there. Make sure you look back through these problems and also do the review, and the vocab is super important on the test.